So you want to try Obsidian, and every time you look up a video to get yourself started, you get a little lost in all the plugins and configuration that they do. If that seems complicated to you, then this video is for you because I'm going to show you a straightforward setup that doesn't use any plugins and is super simple. Let's dive in. So the first question before we get into all the setup is, why would you want to use Obsidian in the first place? When you look at Obsidian and all the crazy setups people have, a lot of folks have said, well, Obsidian is an app for power users because it's so configurable and there's all these complicated things people want to do with it. I don't think that's necessarily true. There's a lot of good advantages to using Obsidian, even if you just want something simple that can hold your notes. The first big advantage and reason you'd want to use Obsidian over other options is it lives off of local file storage. Most notes apps like OneNote or Evernote and other popular apps out there use a cloud storage model where they take your information and it's on their servers. And your files live there. In Obsidian, it's completely different. It actually all lives on your machine, in a directory in your hard drive, and it's all a bunch of markdown files and folders, and we'll show you that shortly. Secondly, the markdown format is another really useful feature, and what attracts a lot of folks to Obsidian is because markdown is a simple plain text format that is completely human readable without any program. You can open just a plain text file like Notepad, and you can read a markdown file without any special binary or proprietary software. You can't do that with apps like OneNote, for instance. You can't open those files unless you have OneNote. So if OneNote ever shuts down or there's some sort of change in the technology, you won't be able to open those files and look at them. So a lot of people look at Markdown as a future-proofing thing, and it's nice and simple because they're easy to share and pretty compatible with different text editors. And because it's such a pretty simple program, it's a text editor that lives on top of a bunch of text files and folders. It's super lightweight and it's fast, especially if you don't bog it down with a bunch of plugins. So Obsidian is a really great app for those reasons. Local file storage, you get the markdown format and future-proofing, and it's very lightweight and runs very quickly and smoothly on most platforms. So now that you've been convinced that maybe Obsidian's worth trying, even if you don't want to overcomplicate it with plugins, let's dive in and actually look at how we want to set it up. So now that we're ready to start setting up Obsidian, I'm going to assume that you've already downloaded Obsidian and you're ready to launch it. So let's launch Obsidian here, and you're going to get the launcher screen that comes up. You'll notice I have a couple of vaults already made, but we're going to make a new vault here. And you're going to click the Create button, and it will ask Create a local vault. And so I'm going to name this Simple Vault because we want it to be simple. And then this is where, again, the power of Obsidian comes through. Location. You pick a place to put your new vault. This means that we're going to actually find a directory on our hard drive that is going to house all the files. We're not sending all our information to a cloud server. So if you click Browse, you're going to find your typical file explorer. And I put all of mine on a hard drive I have here in a folder that I call Vaults. And I'm going to select that folder. Then you're going to notice it's going to just put it in this directory. And when I hit Create, boom, here comes our Obsidian window. I'm going to now open the actual folder. Show in System Explorer, it's going to open Windows Explorer here, and you're going to see that this is my vault. I have a folder. That's the simple vault. And then there is my welcome.md, my markdown file. And I'll show you one of my actual vaults that has a lot more files in it. And you'll see here that I have a number of folders. If I open up my reference, I can then come in here and I have notes here, and this is all, they're just markdown files. And if I open them in Notepad, you can see that markdown, you can literally read this without any special program. Those are the two big reasons why people like to use Obsidian, is because it's using that universal sort of markdown format and storing the files locally. So let's talk about our goals for a simple Obsidian vault. It's really three things you need your Obsidian vault to do. You need to be able to take your notes quickly and easily. You need to organize them intuitively and then find and retrieve them when you want to, go look that stuff up you just wrote. So we need to keep that in mind as we're building out our vault. All you really need to accomplish those goals are two things: notes and folders. And that's pretty much the same structure that you'll find in basically any of the best notes apps. They might call them something different, like a notebook or a collection or something like that, but it's basically a folder and files. And so we're going to do the same thing in Obsidian. And we're not going to get complicated with a bunch of tag structures and cross-linking and all this nonsense, just folders and notes. And so What do you use for a folder structure? Well, it doesn't really matter. It just needs to be something that you like and that makes sense to you. So some popular ones are like the para method that Tiago Forte created. I'm going to show that in this video, but I'm not going to get into the details of how it works. If you want to check that out, go check out his channel. He has great videos explaining the method. I'll link to it in the description as well. You could also just do a topic-based, folder structure, just by topic, or project-based, or something else that just makes sense to you. But whatever you do, I do recommend keeping it very simple. 1 or maybe 2 levels of nesting is really all you need. If you get more than that, it gets kind of clunky and clumsy for finding things. So we're going to quickly set up a folder structure based on para with one addition. I always like to start with an inbox. And the reason for that is I'll show you in a moment. We can set a specific folder for all of our new notes to go into, which is really good because it corrals them all, and then you can organize them later so that it stays consistent and you can find things easily. So then we're going to do the whole para thing with projects, and then we're going to do a folder for areas. We're going to do a folder for resources or reference or whatever you want to call it, and then number 4 is archives. And I do add yet another folder, one more folder in all my Obsidian vaults that I call the utility folder. And you can do a Z so that it goes to the bottom. And then inside that folder are 2 other folders. And those folders are attachments and, oops, we'll move that afterwards, templates, which we'll just click and drag. Very easy. You've got a nested folder now. So those come in handy in a moment when we configure the settings. So now we have our folder structure. Let's set up some settings. When I click this little cogwheel, it brings up the settings panel, and you'll see this screen here. But we're going to go to files and links, and we're going to set up a couple of things. You'll notice right at the top, the first thing we can configure is the default location for new notes. So we're just going to change this to the inbox by selecting in the folder we specify and then selecting the inbox. The next thing is default location for new attachments. Now, by default, they just drop right into the top level directory, which may be okay. I don't like that because, again, I like it to be organized. So here you can change again to a specific folder or to just the same folder as the file you're attaching it to, which some people like that too. I prefer to have them all in one folder, which is in the folder specified below, and I pick my utility attachments. All my attachments go there. Next, we're going to set up the templates. And really all we need to do for that is one thing. We're going to go down here to the templates. And now you'll see these are plugins. They call them plugins, but they're just the main modules of Obsidian, different features that are in there. So these aren't things you download and configure. They're just part of the program to begin with. And every Obsidian installation will have these no matter what. So in here under templates, you're going to go up here to template folder location, and we're going to pick that utility templates folder. So what this means is every file that we put into that templates folder is going to be automatically become a template, and then we can reuse that later on. And we're not going to go crazy with templates. I'm going to put one template in here. We're going to make a note, and I just call this basic template, and I always have one of these that is just like my universal template that I use all the time. I call it basic because B is high in the alphabet, and it goes to the top of the list when I'm searching, so that's always easier. So we're going to press Control semicolon, and we're going to add properties. Now, if you're already getting a little weirded out, like, oh, properties, this is where Obsidian gets, complicated with metadata and stuff, don't worry, we're only putting 2 things here. First, aliases. This is basically, you can create a nickname for your note, and then when you search that, either one, the title you gave it or the alias, it will help find it, and you can link it by both names. So for instance, this goal to take over the world, it has a title, a goal, and then it also has the alias take over the world. Now watch what happens when I close this and I open up the file switcher, which is sort of the basic navigation in Obsidian. If I search for take over the world, you can see now it actually comes up and I can click on it and it will bring me to that same file. Now, to contrast that, if you don't have an alias like the clothing sizes, if I wanted to say, say shirt sizes, and I'm like, oh, well, it's not there, it's not going to find the file. So that's the advantage of having the aliases in your properties. I like to have this. I don't put them on all my notes. I just like to have a reminder that I can do it in front of my face. And then we're going to put tags, and that's it. There's our basic template. And then we don't have to save or anything. We just close the tab. And then if we wanted to create a new note, we could open up the command palette, Control P, templates, insert template, basic template, and then bam, we have our regular template here. And then I'm gonna make a bunch of new notes here. Okay, so now I have a bunch of new notes in my inbox, and I can show you how simple this can be to organize. So we're going to now move these around. First one is a goal, and I'm just gonna put that under areas. I'm gonna make a little folder called goals, and we'll just drop that in there. And you can do this all with hotkeys, but I'm just using like point and click here for simplicity. Cat videos I wanna watch, we'll call that a resource. I'll call that entertainment, and we'll just throw that in there. Goals for simple vault project in there, put that in here. My clothing sizes will go under resources. Even if you just do something like this and then you're like, oh shoot, I wanted a subfolder, it's really easy to create one and say, you know, clothing and style perhaps. And then I can, and you'll notice that it automatically does an alphabetical sort, which is always nice. You can change the sorting here if you want. But either way, now we have a very simple vault. We have one level of nesting, and then you have your basic categories. And that's it. That's all you really need for a very functional Obsidian vault. You don't need a bunch of plugins or complexity in it. So if you liked this video, then please press the like button, subscribe, and you can look forward to my next video where I'm going to talk about just a handful of plugins that add a lot of quality of life features that will make Obsidian even more streamlined and easy to use for you. So stay tuned for that and click the bell icon to get notified so you don't miss it.